Rowena, I like your studio over there, what you're doing.
Oh, thank you. I share my co-working with someone who does a lot of podcasting. So I
Ah.
have to be honest, I'm not sure what everything does in this room. There's a lot of
Looking
cables and
pro.
looking pro.
That's
But
so
not
cool. Okay. So you're standing as well, right?
yeah, I've got a standing and we've got panels. It's a special podcasting booth in a small co-working. It's really cool. It's really cool.
Very cool. I like it. The sound quality is perfect.
Thank you.
Love that. Cool. So maybe everyone can tell us where they're joining from. Yeah. What country, what city, maybe your position in your company so that we can kind of like tailor the webinar towards you.
We have Larry from Montreal. Welcome. Who else is with us? We have Germany.
Got Italian.
Hi,
Dallas.
Francesco.
Yeah, hello.
We have Texas here and Florida, all parts of the US. And Nigeria, I see. Welcome, welcome everybody.
We have a worldly crew. Austria, Costa Rica. I was just in Costa Rica a month ago. Poland. Oh, hi from Poland. Thank you for joining. You are the bordering country of what's happening right now, and maybe we will take a moment and say something about the current situation while we wait for everyone. Ooh, it's a very heavy, I think, situation, and we are here kind of like carrying on and continuing to help everyone figure out this great resignation. But of course, many people in Poland in Ukraine and all over the neighboring countries are figuring out how to help the refugees, how to give them shelter and give them food, and obviously to stop this madness from continuing. So I really hope that the international community will stay strong together, and they will do more for Ukraine than what have they already done, which is great. But I saw this morning that a lot more troops are coming in, so they will need a lot more reinforcement. So yeah, if you talk to your governments, please do whatever you can from your side to help support Ukraine, and yeah, hopefully stop this madness. That's what I have to say. I don't know if you want to say something, Veronica and Rowena.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that we truly acknowledge this whole situation. I'm actually joining from Poland today, and I'm really close to the border, and like the whole world is upside down again. But I do believe we as people can really stop it. And also, if any of you guys have any questions or feel like we can help you in any way, just don't hesitate to reach out to any of us. Yeah.
And I'm just reading there that Robin was saying he's taken in a refugee family to his home, and including an 8-month-old pregnant lady. So thank you so much, Robin. It's that action, isn't it? More than words. So I think that sums it up. And please, as Veronica said, if we can help in any way, heartfelt offer of that, of course.
All right. I think we will be starting. My name is Veronica. I'm from Remote Health team. I'm really glad to welcome everybody here today. I'm excited you joined us, and I would like to introduce Lona, who will be our expert today. Lona, the floor is yours.
Great. Thank you so much, Veronica. I wanted to also thank the Remote How team that has put this webinar together. We think it's really important that we talk about these topics. And thank you, all of you, for taking the time out of your day, as busy as you are, to come to this webinar. So I want to make sure that we give you as much value as possible because you guys showed up. I will kind of like give you a quick introduction about myself, as well as Rowena here, and then we'll go into a bit more of a discussion. I do encourage you to please write down any questions that you have ahead of time. I did a webinar last week where we had 300 plus people on it, and we had about 70 questions, so we weren't able to get to all of them. So if you do have some questions, let's make this interactive. Let's make this something that you can take home or at work and make a change in your company. So let's see here. A quick presentation of myself. My name is Lona, as Veronica mentioned. I'm the head of revenue at SafetyWing. I'm also a Y Combinator founder and an advisor to many startups. I am an expert on Remote How website as well, and I talk about attracting and retaining the best talent in the world, mostly through the benefits that you offer. So today's agenda, we will have poll. Actually, we did send some questions before the webinar, so I'll go over those results, and then we'll show you a bit more of the poll. Then we'll go into some like a panel, kind of like back and forth with me and Rowena, as well as a Q&A at the end. So very quickly, who is SafetyWing and why are we here? SafetyWing is actually building a global social safety net for remote workers and distributed teams. What that means is that we're building this future where companies that have employees and contractors all over the world can take care of them by offering them amazing benefits like health insurance, income protection, pension and retirement, life insurance, etc. These are things that people need, especially in today's age. And those of us that are remote and traveling the world, these kind of benefits, they travel with you all over the world. So they're very important. I will also like to introduce Rowena before we go into the quick presentation. So Rowena, if you would like to say a few words about yourself, this is the time.
Welcome everyone, bienvenidos. I'm based in Zaragoza in the north of Spain. I'm originally from Galway on the west coast of Ireland. I've been remote working and nomading since 2007. I'm one of the few people in the world who's developed academic courses on remote work skills with some nomading in there as well. And it's a pleasure to be here today with Remote How and SafetyWing and to look at all the different considerations around the Great Resignation and also to hopefully answer your questions. So I see some Q&A coming in already, so make sure you grab a pen and paper and make a note of those questions.
Wonderful. And Rowena is a human Rolodex of all questions. So all, remote, hybrid, whatever questions that you have, please write them down. Even if they don't have to do with this webinar, she's really quite great. We do quite a few panels together in different conferences. So it's always a pleasure to have her with me because she's also a university lecturer and academic. So I really trust that her research can inform a lot of your decisions versus going to maybe some newer people that might not have the background. I wanted to bring Rowena because she does have the background to back that up with research. So really excited to have you. Well, I'm going to launch into kind of like an overview of this webinar. That way we can have a starting point. I'm going to ask a couple questions to Rowena, and then I'll launch into the questions for you guys. So what's happening in the world right now? Well, in 2021, about 50 million Americans quit their jobs. That's about 15% of the population. I'm not sure what that figure is for Europe and the world, but I suspect that a lot of things are happening there in very much in the same scale. And we want to figure out like why is this happening? What is the analysis? Well, what I've seen is that these resignations are highest among mid-career employees and contractors. So think 30 years old to 45 years old. And these are also highest in tech and healthcare. And what I suspect is because demand for these jobs went through the roof. Therefore, they became truly overwhelmed and burnt out. So these are also industries that we have to be very careful in. And I think many of you are probably in the tech industry, so this is very relevant for us. But maybe a quick question to Rowena in terms of this resignation rates. What have you seen, with your research, and what is the analysis from your side that which industries as well as people are going through this right now?
I think what's really interesting to look at here is the research coming out of Europe in particular, Lona, in relation to well-being. And you mentioned the word burnout and the impact of the pandemic, because on the 15th of March, coming up soon in a couple of weeks' time, we'll be 2 years into this pandemic, and the impact of home working only in an emergency has been quite profound. So one of the things that's coming through in the well-being research is very much that people had struggled during that work from home. If we add in that leaders have struggled, and there may be some of you on the call, in terms of, we often forget when we talk about the workforce that we're talking about leaders as well, that they were stressed, that they were put under amazing pressure. Nick Bloom out of Stanford said most leaders during the core part of the pandemic were working 15 hours extra a week. Wow. Unpaid. So that pressure on CEOs in particular, 15 hours extra, gives you an idea why, if they've been so pressured, as we filter down into mid-career and these other levels, that impact on Lona in terms of people feeling not attended to, maybe slightly left aside. And of course, they all wanted to emerge out of the pandemic, and it hasn't happened. We've had so much starts and stops. If we look at Ireland in particular, there's been 6 different attempts to open offices again, and they're just actually going back in April this year after these 6 attempts. So I think the combination of the impacts of the pandemic and those false starts have meant that a lot of employees are dissatisfied and looking for different options.
Thank you. That's a really great kind of like point of view from what's happening during the resignation right now. So let me go and talk about the primary drivers that we're seeing in the Great Resignation. So what I'm seeing here is, compensation is a big factor, obviously, and we can talk about, flat salaries versus location-dependent salaries. We had a webinar about this a week ago, and it was a huge hit. Benefits, what benefits are these employees and contractors receiving, and the time between promotions, size of pay increases. And also, as I was talking with Rowena about this, initial onboarding is a big thing. So I want to take a bit of time for her to explain that, but also performance and then training opportunities, obviously. So these are the primary drivers, what's happening and what's behind this. Of course, it's very important that you as leaders ask your team members if they're leaving, why. So have an exit interview, and that way you can determine, okay, what is it out of this list and where can we focus and make things better so that the people that stay or that come on board, they continue to stay with us for a long time. Rowena, I'd love to hear a bit more from your side, what you're seeing there.
Yeah, so I've seen a couple of people asking about the sources for I'll share a couple of links, give me a minute, and I'll share a couple of links to back up the research from Europe on the well-being. Give me 1 minute, so I'm going to access my Rolodex and share it in a moment. But yeah, Lona, the thing is that people were looking for this compensation. So I think a lot of people stayed put during those intense points of the pandemic. And then all the things you've mentioned there kicked in. Because if we think about contingency as a word, and then we use other words in English like sort of temporary holding pattern, that's what a lot of companies were doing, because they were waiting to go back to the office or move to the hybrid model, and they kept doing that. So a lot of the onboarding plans, a lot of the companies I work with, they would say, oh, we created a temporary digital onboarding plan, right, for the people that we onboarded during the pandemic. And then they never quite updated it because they couldn't catch up. So particularly with the tech companies, they suffered from not only the loss of people due to all these reasons on the deck, but then they also suffered from the domino effect of that. As they lost people to support their onboarding. They lost people to be buddies to new people who arrived in their teams, and their performance measurement, etc., their training opportunities, it all decreased. So for me, I think it's a combination of all these things. And I wonder if people tuning in, looking at that list and some of the other things we've mentioned, maybe you could be interested, you could just write down the one or two things you feel are most important to you, because it's such a wide range, isn't it? And also your company could be in its growth pattern, it could be early stage growth, it could be more traditional. So where does your company fit in that profile, or where does your team fit in that profile? And it's another way, Lona, of looking at the drivers for that resignation pattern.
Yeah, for sure. No, this is great. And I love the questions that are coming in. We'll just leave them a little bit towards the end. And what Rowena mentioned in terms of you putting down those things, I think that you guys did mention those in the pre-webinar questions. So I'm going to share those poll responses because they're very interesting. Let me go here. So yeah, just a couple more slides and then we'll go into the poll. So what infrastructure to stem turnover? So what do we need to be able to, stem this from happening? Well, it first requires leadership to truly understand their employees. And just like Rowena said, these leaders were, at home working 15 plus hours, maybe not really seeing, okay, what is happening to my employees? What do they want? Are things changing? Who is going after them? Are they getting offers? Like these things really require leadership to develop this empathy for really what the employees are going through, and to pair that to figure out, okay, what do we need to change? And also make an action plan, not just talk, but what is that action plan that you can really make some changes. So for example, at SafetyWing, what we do is that quarterly, we get together the whole team. Now we're 100 plus people, and we talk about, okay, what are the things that we want as benefits? And we list all of them down, and the top few that everyone votes on, we make them happen. So every quarter we're checking in with a pulse of everyone, how they're doing and what we can do to make their lives better. And I think by implementing something similar, whether you have a giant team or maybe a smaller team, this makes people feel heard, and they feel good that actually management and leadership is doing something for them, but also keeps a very close eye on what's happening with the people, with your team. They're the most important, I guess, people to drive revenue in your companies. So you have to take care of them. And I know a question that came in the last webinar I did about Great Resignation was, how can we make this not so expensive, because people just want all these benefits, but how can companies offer them? So that's a really great question that maybe I can enlist some of the help of Rowena if she has some information, but there is a few things you can do that are not so expensive, but also think about how expensive it would be to have a lot of turnover and how much it costs to train that new person and onboard them. So definitely think about those, and some of these things can not cost that much money per person.
That's a really good point as well. And adding to the slide, Lona, I really want to make sure that people understand the difference between empathy and compassion. You can look to Susan David, Dr. Susan David, you can look to Dr. Daniel Goldman as well on EI, emotional intelligence, but there's been a lot of use of this word empathy, which is perhaps what we did earlier in the call, empathizing, sympathizing, verbally, it does matter, but we do need to be more compassionate and with action. And I think that a lot of companies, and I'm not saying leaders, companies as a unit, as a network organization, have relied on a lot of verbiage, a lot of words, and they need to move to action in terms of that, how they show that compassion. And I really like the example you gave there of checking in with your team at SafetyWing, and that is a true gauge of do something, check in and how it's landing. landed. Try something out, check in. And I wonder if Veronica as well from RoRemote, how would have any comments on that. But it's in terms of that remote team culture, we really have to almost over communicate, repeat, repetition. It's really, really important because it doesn't always land the same as it would if we were all in the room together and we were toasting or we were sharing pizza. So if we're doing it remotely, which is a lot of questions are coming in, it has to be very much more meaningful. It needs to be more personal. And that's something as well within your own culture that only, you know, as a company employee or as a founder, or as a leader, that you can answer to how that sits well with you, how that action sits well with you. But it has to have that action and change, Lona. So I think that's really important on that slide.
Awesome. And I think this is the last slide that I'll be talking about. It's about, rethinking these global benefits. So people will be asking, okay, what are the things that you should offer? What are these great benefits for distributed teams, for those that are not in an office? These are some of the top ones that I like, and I've seen a lot of companies implement these. So for example, location independence, this is huge. I think myself, I live in like 5 different jurisdictions in a year, multiple cities. I love having the freedom to live anywhere that I choose to. I am not told that I must be in a certain location that would stifle my freedom. And freedom is very, very important to me as an entrepreneur. Minimum vacation days are super important. So I keep saying this over and over again, but a lot of companies will have this unlimited vacation policy. And especially if the leaders do not take that vacation, the team is left there saying, well, I shouldn't probably take any time off because the CEO is not taking any time off. Whereas in our company at SafetyWing, the founders do take at least a week off each quarter, and they will turn off all emails, Slack, anything. You won't be able to email them or get a response within that week, which is really fantastic because it really sets an example that this is how you should take time off. And it's not, oh, let me take the days off, but then I'm still working and I'm still replying to emails, which used to be the old culture. And I think it's nice to be in this new era where, you know, it is okay to take the time off. It is okay to, shut off your brain for work so that you can recharge and come back refreshed and really contribute with creative ideas versus being overwhelmed and burnt out and, running that candle from both sides, but really not producing quality work. Paid team gatherings in cool destinations. This is really great because we are a remote first company. We don't have to have an office. And those savings we can put towards having these vacations for the team. So in January, I was in Costa Rica. In March, in 3 weeks, we're going to Tulum. So it's really fantastic to be able to go to these gatherings. And really, I feel seen and heard by the company to give me these like free vacations a week every 3 or 6 months. Which is, I don't know, I think it's an amazing perk that it would be very hard to compete against. Personal development budget, some kind of health insurance so that I feel safe that if something happens to me, I'll be taken care of and I'll be able to come back to work. And then, of course, being able to be async and do a lot of the work and meetings async versus being in Zoom meetings one after the other, day after day. That's very tiring. So that's what I would like to say. Maybe Rowena has something.
Yeah, I'm going to put my real academic hat on for a minute, Lona, on this one. I know you won't mind, but having studied remote work for 5 years at a research and academic level, something you said there, the async work, if we look at Matt Mullenweg, if we look at the different pyramid, those who don't know it, I'll share, but there is phases that we move to remote work, phases that we move through as we evolve. And the amazing thing about SafetyWing, as they're selling their products and everything, is they are remote first. And the thing is that many, many companies are trying to move that way still, and they haven't got the processes in place. So I also would like to make sure that the tools and tech and infrastructure culture is there. And of course, that's really related as well to training and development, which you've got on here. So all of these things are really important. But if we think of a remote first company, or even a hybrid company that has remote first attitude and mentality as a scaffolding of a building, we need to have that scaffolding in place before we can look at a lot of these other things as well. And that's why, looking at some of the comments coming in on chat, people might be feeling a little bit frustrated, because a lot of companies haven't got that awareness yet and they're still trying to build it. All these benefits are important, but you also need to really understand what your mental attitude or your approach is to remote work. And that remote first, digital first mindset is really, really important. So once we have that, people, and we start to move to it and people can see it coming, we really can support people to work across time zones, to be more, to take those days off. And it's credit to your founders, Lona, as well, because they wouldn't be able to take that time off if they didn't have a lot of the processes set up. I'm sure you would agree. And I'm sure some of the leaders listening would say, I'd love to be able to do that, but I'm not there yet. So it's not, it's a really positive message, because since we went into the pandemic, and for many years now, GitLab, Doist, Remote How, all these companies, SafetyWing, are sharing their knowledge. So anyone who wants to know more about this, Google the GitLab handbook, look at Boundless, and look at Grow Remotely, look at all these different sites, and you've got lots of resources there to help you support that and move to remote first.
Perfect. I think that's fantastic. And it launches us right into the kind of like what the pre-webinar poll was. I just want to go through these results, go through the polls, and then we'll go into the questions. We have about 30 minutes for questions. So we asked you guys, is your organization borderless? And about 30% of you said yes in 6 or more countries, which is huge. And only about 42% said no, we don't have plans to become borderless, which is fine. So about 42% are no, and then the rest is yes, which is quite interesting. And then we asked another question, which benefits do you find most interesting? And we listed remote, working remote, 4-day work week, different fun ones. And here is what those findings were, which were really interesting. So let me move this down. So the primary factors for people considering a career move was 1, working remote, nomadic full-time, so that's great. Continuing education credits, so people do want that personal budget to learn whatever they want to learn. 4-day work week, very interesting. A lot of countries are experimenting with this right now, like the UK and Portugal, and I think a few different ones. Borderless health insurance and async work. So these are the primary factors. And secondary factors were home office improvement, employee well-being, quarterly or yearly bonuses, and fixed income retirement, fitness, or healthy lifestyle incentives. So this is interesting. I will launch into a poll now, so maybe if Veronica can help me. We want to figure out how many recruiter inquiries about a new job do you get per day? So
you should see the poll already. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
I wonder how many.
This is great.
I know a couple of my contacts have been saying they've been inundated with offers. Recruiters. Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see.
Interesting. So it looks like everyone voted. I mean, some people are doing some other things in the computer maybe. But okay, so maybe we can end the poll.
Yep.
And let's share the results. Okay, so it seems that, yeah, many of you are actually getting at least 1 or 2 per day, and then 8% more than 10 a day. Popular. That's crazy.
Popular. You're on some list somewhere. Be careful.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Cool.
And
Okay.
the ones that aren't getting it, don't feel bad. That just means that you probably, I don't know whether you're getting them through LinkedIn or whether you're getting them through some other social media. But yeah, that's quite a high percentage. So I think it's about 70% that are getting more than one a day there, Lona.
Wow. Yeah, for sure. And so maybe we can go to the next one, Veronica. Stop sharing. Let's see. Maybe you wanna, yeah, I can close it. So have you considered Have you considered taking a new job in the last 6 months? Yes, I took a new job in the last 6 months. Yes, but I decided to stay put in my current job. No is C. So this is also interesting, and it's obviously anonymous, so don't worry. You can just
Yeah.
vote.
And if you don't see an answer there that suits you, you can put a comment in chat if you want to make a comment on this. Why maybe you haven't looked, haven't considered this in the last 6 months. So please use chat as well if you want to add any value, because the more comments you make, the more we can help you and keep it interactive.
Amazing. Great. Okay, so then, yeah, maybe you can end the poll because it seems like most people voted. Okay, so 80% yes, and it's split 50-50 between yes, I did take the new job, and yes, I considered it, but I stayed in my current job. Great, so we can stop sharing this.
I can add a little bit of research here, actually, if that's okay, Lona. It might be interesting. The ones that said no and stayed in their job, I can't remember the exact percentage, but it's really high. If you stayed in your job and you had a counter offer, you're 80 something percent likely to leave in the next 6 months after that.
Oh,
So yeah, so the thing is, if there's a counter offer and you stay in your existing job, what I know we're looking at there is that trust has been shaken up, that trust has been shaken up. So just wonder, out of the 40% who stayed, if you did take a counter offer, or if you're a leader considering that. I know because a couple of the companies I've worked with have counter offered, and it doesn't necessarily keep people longer term.
wait, so
Yeah.
are you saying that if you, let's say I receive an offer for X amount, and then I go to my leader and say, okay, I got this offer, would you guys give me a bit higher? Are you saying that that could backfire on me?
Yeah, I'm saying that most companies who counter offer to match the new offer, the employee will leave within 6 months. There's a really high percentage, because it's not that it's backfiring. Well, you could argue that it's backfiring, but the way we look at it, the way the research presented it as, the trust, that the fact that they've to come to you for the compensation package with the counter offer. So think about it from an employee's perspective. Maybe they're coming saying, look, if I go here, they've offered me X, they've offered me Y. I guess it's like a game of poker, guys. You're forcing the hand, and then when you force the hand, what happens is maybe that person's going to leave anyways. So Lona, I was picking up as well on you saying about the exit interview, really important, but we want to be more proactive even before that. If someone's coming to us and there seems to be tension, or there seems to be something going on, then we really need to be engaging them. I've seen someone asking questions. We want to be engaging them with, better, stronger engagement early on if we see them in a risk category.
Yeah, absolutely. But that's happened to my team, for example, where, one of my employees, she said that, yeah, I got this offer, or, there's this amount. So I immediately took action, because I was like, you're so valuable to us. We'll match the offer, no problem. And I never look back into like, maybe there's a trust issue. I never think about that as well, because I'm also a founder. I'm trying to gauge, okay, what will it take for me to keep great talent? And I know that good people will not just say, oh, I just got this offer because they just want more money. It's truly because the market is showing those numbers. So I'm also very understanding towards that. I know that people won't just cheat, especially in our culture that we built. It's a very open and honest culture. So I trust that, my team will come to me and tell me like, hey, this is what's happening. And by the way, guys, this is the reality. This is happening every day. So we have to be open about this and accepting, and not, give them that room that they can come to you, versus being closed off and then learning that, oh, they left before I could even counter offer, I could do anything. So it's really important that you're always kind of like, open to these things. They are happening, they're around us. and do whatever you can to prevent it, but also do have that open door that if someone else is offering them something else, you want to see what is that thing that they're offering, like, so that we can put together, the structure to compensate these people in their fair market value, because a lot of them need to get their fair market value. And I think in the past 10 years, we've given people maybe not the fair market value. I know that many companies like Google and Facebook have made, billions of dollars from their employees. Don't they deserve like a bigger share of that? I mean, that's also another discussion, but like, it's very interesting how, certain companies will have, certain prices on talent, and also based on location and things like that, which also it's another whole conversation and can of worms.
A can of worms, yeah. But I mean, we're able to have that discussion because it's not personal to us, Lona, completely at the moment. I know you've given the example of your team member, and thank you for being so candid, but a lot of people joining in might also feel that's not the culture in my company. And that doesn't mean that that culture is wrong. That doesn't mean that culture is wrong. It's just different. So it's interesting to ask yourself, again, I said I'd do this, I'm giving you some contemplation here. If this topic is playing around in your head, ask yourself, if you did get a really good offer, how would you approach your direct manager? Because it's a nice thing to play in your head, because we don't often role play that out. And yeah, I certainly know in the more transparent remote companies, in the performance reviews, the level of conversations are that candid.
Great.
Okay, so trust me, because I also have heard about them from people who have moved on. So I think it's a good thing to ask, what would you do? Or as a leader, how would you approach that conversation, and see what your reaction is to that?
Great. And this is the last poll, by the way, question. And Veronica, if you want to launch that, then we're going to questions, because we have a good amount of them. Yep. So would you consider making a career change, a lateral career change with a new company if it aligned to your priorities better? So yes, absolutely. Okay, yeah, this is easy.
Yeah, and I wonder if aligning to those priorities, Lona, I just don't want to guess it, but are some of those things you said, like the work from anywhere policies, all these things that, again, a lot of companies haven't had the chance to think through. Yes. Or create processes on.
That's a great point. Now, how do we want to do questions, Veronica? Do you want to read from the first all the way down? Should we try to?
Sure, I can go back to the chat, and I would start with the Q&A on the bottom.
Okay. Share results, 84%. Okay, great. All right, Q&A time. So we're in the chat. What are we seeing? Who had the first question?
So I'll take this one, Lona, if that's okay. I'm seeing sure. Clark asked this. How do you think about work from home alternatives as an employee benefit? For example, we work co-working memberships. Are remote employees receiving this? That's a wonderful question, Clark, because I'm joining today from my co-working, and I'm a big co-working advocate. So it's really, really important to look again to the remote leaders in this space. If we look to GitLab, Doist, GitHub even, they give stipends or grants for workers, not of all levels, of certain levels, to have either their full monthly cost for membership of a co-working or a co-shared office space, or even a partial membership so that they can use maybe certain half days or whatever in a month. In a lot of the fully remote companies, automatic as well, this is part of their package. So I hope I'm answering your question, but I also want to take the opportunity for everyone listening to realize the benefits of co-working. It's a massive growth area. The research shows that more collaboration happens in co-working spaces. Lona and Veronica were asking me about my podcasting room, which is actually not mine. It's one of my co-workers, and I'm just borrowing it for the hour. So yes, to answer your question, Clark, but also really good question there about that bigger picture of how important co-working is, and that a lot of companies are adding that in as a benefit.
That's Awesome. Yeah, at SafetyWing, we don't have that because we believe that because you don't have to travel to an office, you don't incur the gas charges as well as the car maintenance fee. But I think we might add it at some point if it gets voted to the top. So I think as people start, as the borders start to open and more people are free about going to an office space or co-working, we might be able to do that. But yeah, let's get the next question because I'm sure there's a ton of questions.
On this pulse check recommendation for say a startup or a pretty new company as such, 6 years is not that new, by the way, but certainly I would be looking maybe a bi-monthly or monthly loan. I don't know if you want to add to that, but I do agree that quarterly probably isn't frequent enough. And I'd also wonder if you think a bit more openly about pulse checks, right? So rather than just using a piece of software, which is great, or a survey tool for pulse checks, add into your one-to-ones that there's a couple of standard questions that leaders are asking. Lona, do you want to add to that?
Yes, I do. We have an NPS at SafetyWing, internal NPS that everybody is measured on, and we report that every month. So somebody is responsible to send out the questionnaire each month to say, how happy are you here? Would you refer SafetyWing to another friend? And then if not, or if yes, and usually we're at 9.5% out of 10. 9.5 points versus percent out of 10. And someone is responsible for this. The head of culture reports on that it's a CEO. The CEO actually reports on that, which is great because he sees all of that. And then quarterly, we do those exercises in terms of like, okay, how would you make the culture better? How would you, what benefits would you want to have a greater experience at SafetyWing?
And I just want to tail end onto those two answers. I know you probably don't even appreciate it, but both of the answers were really about transparency. And I love it, right? So Lona said about the first answer about the co-working that, it's not the top of our list, but if it was, we would offer it to people and we would let them know. And also on that pulse check that someone is answerable, has accountability, and again, that it's transparent. So there might be, for people joining in, a different mindset there, because that's very much the remote first way, that you're not shying away from running a survey and you are quite happy to publish the results internally, of course, but amongst all your team. So I think that's a really good illustration from SafetyWing there on the way to go with that.
Is there another question somewhere? Veronica, can you read?
Sure. So let's move on to the next one. What is the pulse check recommendation for a startup that has been in existence for 6 years?
Oh, Rowena already asked.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. The next one would be, how do you expect employee expectations and benefits to change again past the pandemic?
I mean, that's a really great one, but the short answer is listen to your people. So when you start a company, you listen to your customers. When you have a company and you're running a company or a manager leadership, you want to listen to your people, see what's happening in the market, see what are they saying, are they happy, what are these extra benefits they want, and are those reasonable? And if they are, implement them. And if you can afford them, absolutely implement them, because they will go a great way to get you really happy employees and productive employees.
Yeah, I love it, Lona. And the only thing I would add to that is in my early career, I was at Vodafone for quite a long time. And we would always talk in the Vodafone mission and setup of the internal customer. And essentially those employees, if you're HR, if you're involved as a leader, they're your internal customers. So, to answer that exactly, we couldn't, because your culture, your company's of a really certain dynamic. So exactly what's been answered there. You need to survey, you need to ask, to understand those expectations, to understand what benefits, to test the market as well, is a really good point. The same way you would do for external marketing, for external customer analysis, and then react and change where you can. So I think really getting your finger on the pulse, if you haven't got it internally, would be the best place to start, and to make sure that you're really listening to your employees.
Next question.
So Andrew wrote, a lot of companies are focused on fostering employee commitment instead of measuring employee engagement, because it better predicts well-being and long-term retention. And he's asking, what are your thoughts on that?
I'll take that one, because Andrew also put a beautiful quote in the chat, which I noticed, because I'm a big Josh Burton fan as well, about commitment versus engagement. And I really agree with you, Andrew, that the focus has probably been in the wrong place. But I wonder whether you could tap into your empathetic part of your thinking and realize that a lot of these companies and leaders have been in contingency, and a lot of them have also perhaps been kidding themselves, for want of using a different term. They haven't really realized that they've got to really change. So there's a massive change management piece going there. So I totally agree with you, but I think we've got a little bit of recovery yet to come out of the pandemic before we can really move to that commitment, rather than or to the proper employee engagement rating, rather than just looking at an employee's commitment via performance analysis. So hopefully that helps, Andrew, but I'm a big Josh Burton fan as well. So thanks for including that quote. It's very inspirational. Lona, would you like to add anything to that?
I'm not going to add, I'm not going to add to that, because I guess I like to answer through experience. And I feel that I am a committed employee, but I don't necessarily have to be that engaged. So at SafetyWing, we don't have to answer Slack messages right away, or we don't have to pretend like we're doing more work. There is no one kind of like praising you so there's no politics. And I love that, where, just because I'm not visibly engaged, it doesn't mean that I'm not committed. And the company has their eye in the right place. We look at output versus input. So if you talk about engagement as input, or, like, we don't measure that, we measure the output. So if you're doing great in terms of the output, then doesn't matter where you're showing up, or how many Slack messages you're sending, or how many emails back and forth.
That was a wonderful message in that, Lona. So thanks for sharing that so candidly. And Andrew agrees, and I think we hit the spot there with him. That's
Good.
Really great.
I'm happy.
Okay, we have another one. Would be interested in hearing a further breakdown on the benefits driver. How about lack of wellness programs?
Lack of wellness programs? Wellness? What is the question around that?
A further breakdown on of the benefits driver.
A favorite breakdown?
A further breakdown of the benefits driver.
Okay. So the question is, I would be here. I think it's related to your slide, Lona. I'm just remembering back the drivers for that benefit overview and the lack of wellness programs. Could that be in there? So I think it's probably the slide before that, is it?
Was it this one, or?
Well, you've got wellness on there, I think, on the next slide. I saw it, or the previous slide. Sorry. You've got employee wellbeing assistance programs. Lona, I'll jump in here, okay, if that's all right. I work for driver's slide, okay. Driver's slide, says the person. I work for 3 large insurance companies, and I provide a program support for EAP, employee assistance programs. So these are obviously mainly for bigger companies out of Ireland and the UK. And yes, there is been a much bigger emphasis during the pandemic on employee assistance programs, and you can see it's on here as one of the answers. What benefits do you find most interesting? It says their employee wellbeing assistance programs, and that came in quite low in your responses, Lona, or mid-range there. But the previous slide has drivers on it as well. I think the previous one, or maybe 2 before. And again, before, sorry, I know you're driving the slides, so I'm being bossy.
Oh, no.
There, and sorry. And so you've got global health insurance, but I guess in there, the global benefits, I think you're thinking of overall well-being as well, or EAP, or a lot of the features of that. Yeah. So you are, right. So I hope that answers your question, that within that, the rethinking global benefits, and certainly when I've discussed it previously with Lona, we would have been looking at overall insurance and well-being. And that's an area I'm personally very involved with, but it is a massive growth area. In the poll that was run, we can see that it's not one of the most important things. But I guess that it depends on the culture again. And what I've seen coming through in the research is that the value of employee assistance programs are very much related to the stress levels, and your pulse check, etc., would maybe pick up on these. So if people are needing that extra support, then of course there is a secondary factor, but they would count their well-being support much higher if, for example, within your culture, and I'm going to be very blunt now, you perhaps, would have a culture of maybe a lot of hours worked or overworking, or that type of culture which could exist. And also we will have that, of course, coming out of the pandemic, where a lot of companies just fell into bad habits and employees due to the fact they were stuck at home and working extra hours because they had nothing else to do, or they had no global mobility. So I hope that answers that question.
Great. I'm sure there's others. Veronica?
There are a few more comments and insights more from our participants, but I don't see any more questions. Did I miss anything?
Okay, so one person said, what about performance reviews that are emailed to you but don't include any conversation with your leader? That is not a performance review based on the definition. If you want to get a definition, go to HR or any HR professional body. A performance review should be one-on-one person exchange with your line manager. And if someone is accredited by a professional body for HR, like the UK Association of HR Managers, there's various international CIPD, they should not be doing any kind of performance review that is just emailed to you. So I would be very carefully looking at that. If that's happening to you in a company, it should be one-to-one. Hopefully that's helped you to go off and understand your rights as an employee, because a one-to-one should be, performance review should be one-to-one, and you should not be on email. Not only wouldn't, that's not the definition of one. That was another question I saw that I wanted to answer, because I really felt compassion for that person. Anything else, Veronica, missed, or I'm just checking?
As you're looking through, Rowena, I want to add to the performance review, something really cool that we did last year at SafetyWing at the end of the year was that we everyone was required to give everybody on the team feedback, but based on our values. So we have 10 values at SafetyWing. So one of them is, be authentic. Another one would be just do it kind of thing, like a doer mentality. And you give the feedback based on two qualities or two of those values that you think the person either exemplifies very well, and then maybe another value that they could do a little bit better. So, but you always steer it towards like those values and how they did well and how they can improve. And I think that was really, really helpful to also kind of like guide that feedback versus being kind of like all over the place.
That's wonderful. And I'm sure you invited, if anyone wanted to discuss it as well, Lona, knowing your culture a little bit, I'm sure you said to people, you need to discuss it if you want to jump on a call, because otherwise we have to be careful in writing. It's one of it's one of the key things in remote work skills, that when we write something, it can be misinterpreted. That's why even you and I during this session, Veronica, we're validating everything again and again. So we have to be really careful. But one of the questions that's come in is actually links on to that. And it says a lot of companies value employees' feedback, but their HR teams, this links to my earlier response, don't have a process to analyze and utilize free response feedback. So they resort to automated text analysis. If employees take the time to share their feedback, shouldn't we as leaders take the time to actually read their responses 110%? And if there's anything that you can do as a leader going away from today, if you can give the respect and due compassion to your team, where you can read or find out that direct feedback, it would be really, really good, because we can talk for long hours about resignation, but people stay with people and they have relationships with people. And if you respect them by taking the time to read, as you say, and respond directly to their feedback, I think it would really improve any relationship in a company. That's my tuppence worth on that one.
I think that's great. I wonder how big this company is that is processing the
Yeah.
feedback automatically.
Yeah, I wonder, but I think a lot of what we're advising today, you can take away and put into action in your own little world, and if you can make some changes there, that would be brilliant. Someone's asking about getting the recorded session, Veronica, so I'll let you answer that one.
Sure. So the recording will be available on the platform. Each of you who signed up is enrolled in the panel, and the recording will be there.
Wonderful.
I also see one more question for Lona. What qualities does SafetyWing look for when hiring among so many applicants? And what does a typical interview process look like at SafetyWing?
That's a great question. We take great pride in the culture that we have built. And I can tell you that coming from Silicon Valley and New York myself, and many companies that really always talked about culture, but I never understood because their cultures were so toxic to me. So, for example, the Uber days, where people, just like backstab each other. And I just didn't understand how you could talk about culture, but then have a culture that is toxic. And I am so grateful to have a culture like we have at SafetyWing, because we believe that people should be authentic, and they should be the best versions of themselves. They should speak their mind and also be taken seriously. So if you speak your mind, you will be taken seriously. So that's a really great quality that you don't get in many companies, because you can truly say what is in your mind. And when you are your most authentic self, you just feel heard and seen. Whereas in other places, you'd have to pretend to be this other person that you're not. So there's not much imposter syndrome. There's not much hierarchy. Even though I'm the head of revenue, I don't oversee like hundreds of people. I'm the same as another person in the team. And that's really wonderful, because it makes everybody feel heard and seen the same way. In terms of the interview process, it can be long because we all three founders want to interview you, just to make sure that we preserve this culture. And as we're growing, we're doubling again this year. We have to make sure that we bring people that will add to that culture, to that eclectic mix, to a different type of thinking. We don't look for people that have this way of thought that everybody else has, somebody that thinks a little bit differently. So we love people from all over the world, all over the different backgrounds, races, because we hire globally. We are diverse in that way. But I know that the founders really look for someone that thinks differently, not someone that will think like the status quo and will just talk about jargon all day long in an interview. And a doer, an entrepreneur, somebody that will do things. There's people that will say things and they'll talk about all kinds of things that they will do, but they never do. So it's about finding that gem. Like, how do you find those doers and those authentic people and their thought leaders? Yeah.
Agassiz, Lona, your values are totally in line with hers.
Yeah.
And we have one more question. Are there specific skill sets, specifically soft skills, that we should now be looking out for, given a huge shift to remote working when recruiting candidates?
I've already answered it.
Oh, yes.
There's evidence-based research out of Canada. Roberta Sawaski, she's another professor out of Canada that's looked at evidence-based, so it's based on proper research, the key skills for remote work screening and effective remote working. And they are conscientiousness, being able to type quick and answer questions on a webinar. That must be me. The second one, I'm tongue in cheek there. The second one is flexibility and adaptability. And the third one is curiosity. And isn't it interesting, Lona, that that's very much an entrepreneurial type of description there. Someone who's been quite a lot of initiative, attention to detail. I've shared it in the chat there as well. That link to a really nice HR Magazine article about those skills and how you can screen for them. So to answer that question with the second part, they're the skills, but think about in your job interviews and your screening process, how you would really, I don't like the word test, but sample for that. So don't think so much about the traditional standard interview process, but if you think about those skills, interpersonal skills, how would you actually get them demonstrated in the interview process? So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, no, I think this is fantastic. And Rowena, it's been awesome doing this panel with you. I love having you on different panels, and thank you to Remote How for inviting us and everyone that joined us. If you're interested about SafetyWing, please go online and get a demo. We'd love to say hello and tell you a bit about what we do.
Thank you, Lona. Thank you, Rowena. It's been great. I was really amazed with all the insights you gave us. Thank you, everybody, for participating and for all your questions. And I hope to see you somewhere in the hybrid space.
Yes. Bye, everyone.
Take care.
Bye. Thank you.